Welcome back to the Retail Initiative podcast. I'm excited. I have a clients on, I have friends in the industry, other experts, all this stuff. And what's great is I have Brooke with Out of Town Clothing here, and she is both a client and at this point, a really good friend. Brooke, it's so good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So some of my audience, or a lot of my audience, may not have any idea who Out of Town Clothing is. Share a little bit more about the brand, where you are, what you sell, all of those pieces.
Yeah, so we're based in North Dakota. So we have two stores. One's in Dickinson, one's in Bismarck. I started the store about 13 years ago, straight out of college. Was always my dream to have a retail store. I went to school for retail, so anyways, I grew up in a small town in North Dakota, and there was really just nowhere to shop. And I've always loved fashion. I've always loved clothes. So it used to require a trip out of town. And my dream was really to just bring a lot of those brands that you couldn't find in our small town to my small town. So, and save people the trip out of town. That's kind of where the name came from.
I love it.
Yeah, it's been really fun. So now, and then we've since opened a second location, and then now we have our online store as well.
Okay. And I want to get to the online side of things, but one thing that I think is really unique about the Out of Town story that I think a lot of people listening are going to resonate with. I'm remembering our very first conversation, even a few years before we ever actually worked together.
You remember
at that time? I have a freakish memory. I remember us talking, and you were sharing about all the things that you carried. You're like, we're a women's clothing store. We also have men's, and we have baby, and we have all these things.
Yeah.
Especially for people listening that maybe have all these different areas that they're trying to focus on and can't figure out, why am I not taking off? First off, where did you start and all the things that you carried? And then what led to you honing in on something a little bit more specific?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I sometimes forget that we had women's and we had men's. So we used to carry men's as well. So we had both of those. And then we also, after about a year in business, decided it would be a great idea to add kids. So we had kids, and then we also had baby. So it was the whole family. And I think at that point, it was really about serving our community. I was there's nowhere to shop, so I need to bring everything, right? Mm-hmm. And as time has went on, and as I've learned more and more about what I'm good at and what our strengths are in the business, I've realized that we can't be all the things for everybody. One of my coaches once told me, you're not here to do a service for the community. You're here to run a business, right? So I really had to reverse my mindset on that. And since then, we are now just carrying women's and baby.
Okay. And so do you feel, because I think what you said is something that so many people feel, I want to serve my community, which I think that comes from a good place. We're all here. Yes, the financial part is great, but there's an impact that we want to make with people. And so that leads to us bringing all these other pieces in. Now that you're on the other side of it, do you feel like you're making less of an impact and it's led to you just being money centric and, quote unquote business centric? Or has it led to a different result than maybe you would have thought of before you had that aha moment?
No, all it's really done for me is let me hone in on what we're really good at and let us be really good at, two things versus, the 4 categories that I was trying to do. So I don't think that we would be where we're at today if I would still be spreading myself thin. I used to go to market and have to go to women's, the men's section, the baby section, I'm trying to fit all this in 3 days, right? And I hated buying men's. I hated it. I was this is not what I want to be doing right now. So when we work with an open to buy planner, Management One, and when they told me, men's isn't making you money, you need to there's no reason for you to keep doing this. I was like, yes. I was excited. Like, I was like, okay, no more men's buying. So actually, I think it just was a really, really good thing for us to really hone in on women's and baby.
Yeah. And so your stores have done really, really well, especially honing in on who you serve, how you serve them. And at the end of the day, I think what you said is something big of, I didn't enjoy it. And folks, like, you're going to do when you enjoy what you do, you're going to do it better than someone that doesn't enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
And it's so simple. It seems so simple, but I think sometimes we just feel pressured to do it. But things have gone really well in store. You also do really well online. And I think, especially because that's literally like my whole thing, that's a lot of our listeners. I guess first off, like, take me back to when you decided, like, okay, things are going well in store. Let's make this shift to online. Like, what was it that made you do that jump at first?
Yeah, I think this was before COVID. I mean, it was before 2020. So it wasn't even that. I know a lot of people through that whole experience were like, oh, I need to be online. It was before that. And I think that it was really just about, like, we serve our customers so well in store, but we also have a lot of like busy moms and all of that just want to do in-store pickups. So that was part of it too, is we wanted people to be able to shop online and, pick up their orders in store. I also was getting to the point where I was like, we have such a good thing in North Dakota, but I'm ready to reach nationwide, right? Like, I'm ready to reach more people and make an impact with more people, and just grow the business, right? So it was a lot of different factors, but those were kind of the big things for me.
Okay. So if I give you a time machine and you were going to use it just for your online sales, and you could go back to Brooke when she was first launching online, what advice do you think you would give yourself at that point? And I'm really speaking because there's a lot of retailers that are like, okay, I'm getting started in this. I want to gain traction. What is something you wish you knew much earlier in that process that you think would have helped you gain the momentum you have now, but earlier in the process?
I mean, I've told people this many times. I think that I just expected to go online and the people would just like show up. Like, I'm going to launch this website and like people are just going to order. Like, that's what it's going to be. And that's not how it works. So I've realized that I think online is much harder than in store to reach people, right? I've learned that you really have to run the ads. You can't really get organic customers like we used to potentially. You really have to pay for it. And that was a hard concept for me to understand and kind of a slap in the face. After the website launched, I was like, oh, we're not getting any orders. How do we fix this?
Yeah, it turns out we need traffic.
Turns out we need to get people to the site. So I think that was the one thing that I would tell people is it's not just as simple as turning on a website.
Yes.
There's a lot more that goes to it.
Absolutely. One thing I want to ask about, because this is something that Out of Town does incredibly well, that I think a lot of retailers struggle with, is like, your creative is awesome. Your photography is great. And I think for a lot of retailers, it's like, how am I possibly going to shoot everything? I'm going to shoot it and then it's going to sell out in store. I just wasted all this time. But y'all do such a good job of getting this creative out. What does it look like to weave that stuff into the operations of the brand? Like, how do you get all of that stuff done and still manage to run your stores and have your team and all of those pieces?
My team. I mean, truly, I think in the last, I would say even 3 to 4 years is when I've really made that shift to like the CEO mindset, which has been, such a game changer for me. I mean, it's a Friday right now and I'm working at home, catching up on laundry and doing the things that I need to, doing fun things like this. because I have a team to help me and they do the photo shoots. I help style the products still and whatnot, but I have managers in both of our stores that are running our storefronts. And it wasn't always like that. I've done every job in the business, right, myself. But I think just really leaning on my team has been super, super helpful.
Yeah. So take me back to that shift to CEO mindset. Like, was there a story or a moment or a series of things that happened where you did kind of make that level up? Because I'm sure you went through, like we all do. I've been through it as well, of it's easier when I do it, or I can't find good people, or I can't, and we make all these excuses and reasons, but we just don't make that. So what was that moment for you where you did finally level up to be like, okay, I'm going to have to be the CEO of this thing and actually run this thing?
Burnout, right? Like just being exhausted and just realizing I can't do it all. And then realizing that I also need to be okay. I'm a control freak, right? A lot of business owners, I think, are. I wanted to do it all myself, like you said, and I had to be okay with it's not going to be perfect, but if they can do something at 80% of what I do, it's okay and it's getting done. And typically the things that I was focusing on, the customer wouldn't notice the difference, right? Like, I'm focusing on being at 100% and my team is doing it at an 80% in my eyes, but also they're maybe styling something different than I would that a different customer loves more than the way that I did it. So I really had to be okay with the fact that it's 80% of what I would do sometimes. And also sometimes it's just different than what I would do. Yes. And that's not wrong. And it's good to have different perspectives and different ideas and all of that kind of stuff. So when I really grabbed onto that, I think a whole lot changed.
Yeah, no, I think that's so good. One of my favorite business books, it's actually right behind me. For those of you that are listening, I'm pointing to a book on a bookshelf behind me. It's called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It is an unbelievable book, but there's a lot in it about building up your team. And that's a principle to the percentage. Exactly what you said is he's like, you need to have an 80% rule, understanding that as you're delegating anything, the 100% for them is likely 80% for you.
Right.
And you can make the excuse of that's all they're ever going to be able to do. So I'm going to keep doing it myself. And then you will be stuck exactly where you are and never able to progress. Mm-hmm. Or we have to shift our mentality around that. And I think what you've done a really good job at, and I observe this some from the outside and some working with you as much as we do, is like you have to define these are the core things that matter. Like this is the non-negotiables for out of town. And then it leaves some wiggle room on this is the 20% that you can be different. And that's okay. And, I'm sure you learned your way to accept the 80%. I'm sure you had some not fun conversations where you micromanaged an employee or something, but you get there, right?
Well, and something that I realized too is the more that I empower them and the more that I challenge them to, and I do have high expectations and I have those conversations with them and I tell them, this is why we need to adjust the coloring on our photos or, whatever. And they know that I'm not coming from like a personal bash standpoint, right? Like I'm not sitting here trying to bash them personally, but they know that my standards are high. So it's, they expect to come into it getting feedback and learning from our conversations. Mm-hmm. And the more that I've empowered them, the more that I've been able to give up control. And that was a whole leadership shift for me too. I've worked with a business coach and leadership was a huge thing that I really needed to focus on the last few years. And she really helped me with that. Mm-hmm. And it's been a game changer for sure.
Yeah. No, gosh, it's so good. So one thing that I really enjoy about conversations with you is the way that you deal with challenges and when things aren't going super well. And I think we can all say, like, we're recording this in February of 2025. 2024 brought some different challenges in retail, and I'm sure you had days that didn't look quite like you'd want. What do those conversations look like with your team that are invested in the brand and are wanting, they want the success of the brand, and then things aren't happening? Like, what does that conversation look like, and how you're addressing when things don't go like you want them to?
Yeah. So early on in the business, so my dad was actually involved right away. He financed the whole thing. Oh, my hair is just, sorry. My dad financed the business right away, and he is an entrepreneur. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. And one thing that he always told me was that never get too high and never get too low. So I used to call him early on and say, hey, we had such a good sales day. There was a bunch of people in and all this. And he'd be like, okay. And then I'd call him the next day and I'd be like, nobody came in today. What happened? And he was like, okay, like, no big deal. And I would get so frustrated. I'm like, Dad, give me something. Like, give me excitement. Give me disappointment. Like, give me it. And he was like, Brooke, you can't go day by day. You can't sit here and focus on the shifts that happen every day. His whole thing was, you really need to ride the waves. And that became one of our core values. And it's really something that I've built my business off of, is riding the waves and getting my team to not get so caught up in, we had a launch that maybe wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be, or, random days where customers didn't come in or whatnot. Tomorrow is a new day, and tomorrow we might be slammed on a Monday, right? So it's been a huge thing for us, and one of our core values to just ride the waves and not get too high and not get too low.
Yeah. God, I mean, I love that. And I love that that's a core value. Like, I don't think that's a common theme. What does it look like? Like, how do you balance? And I would say, because I'm a big believer, like, things don't cancel each other out. Sometimes things just coexist.
Yeah.
It seems like they would contradict, but really they just exist at the same time. You have goals. You have standards. You have, daily sales goals and yearly sales goals. And this, you generally want within that wave there to be a line going up on the chart, not down on the chart. How do you balance, like, wanting those things to happen and at the same time letting yourself have that ride the wave mentality? Because I don't think that means I don't care.
Sure.
And I think ride the wave could almost seem like just whatever happens, and we're cool. So, like, how does that translate into, like, a day-to-day thing for you, knowing that you do very much care about sales and all of that?
Well, I would say, it's more about just focusing on the things that you can control, I guess. More about focusing on those things that you can control, and not necessarily, I don't care. Obviously, we get excited when we have a good launch. We, get down on ourselves a little bit when Black Friday sucked, or, whatever it was. But I think the main thing is like, for example, so if we had a Black Friday that was down from last year or whatever, my mentality sometimes is like, okay, let's make up for that in December. This is our busiest season. Let's take December and make it amazing. And what are the ways that we can do that? Instead of being like, we had a terrible Black Friday, we really need to do a good launch next time. That's not how I talk to my team. It's more like, okay, here's the things that maybe contributed to that. How can we turn that around next week or next month or whatever? And that's kind of the way that I talk to them about it. And they've really learned that too. Just for example, we did a launch last Friday, which was Valentine's Day. Wasn't super successful, probably one of our lower ones. And they spent a lot of time on it. It was a great, we felt like it was styled really well, all of that. and they were really down on it on our Monday meeting. And I was like, you guys, it was Valentine's Day. Moms have a ton going on with their kids. They're worrying about Valentine's. Some people do go on dates. So I'm like, there was a lot going on, and it was a Friday and it was Valentine's Day. Let's not get hung up on it. Let's just make this week good. And they were like, really? I was like, you guys did a good job. I was like, let's look at the photos. The photos looked good. The styling looked good. You did everything that you could. And I think that's more conversations that we have.
I think that's good. It's like kind of what I'm hearing some is like you have the very bottom and you have the very top. And the principle of riding the waves doesn't mean that there's no movement where we're just this like stoic, unfazed thing. It's like, no, there's room to celebrate wins and celebrate when things are going well, but we're not getting to the point where we're going to go to that tip top and let our identity be shifted off of a single day or a single month or even a single year to the point of like, excuse my French, if you have kids in the car, I'm sorry, but it's like, I'm the shit. But then on the other end, the wave goes down. It's okay to be a little bummed. It's okay to be disappointed, but we don't want to then get to that other end where it's like, I am a piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
Instead, it's like, you just lower you change the area by which you might go up and down just to balance out a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is just believing in yourself, right? And looking, like I said, looking at those things and being like, okay, was it us or was it just the environment or the world right now? And if it was us, let's figure out what we can do better or different. And if it wasn't us, and if it was just the environment or the day or the, politics or whatever it is, let's do what we can, and our best is all we can do.
Yes. Gosh, I love it. It's almost like, when I'm talking with friends and like they're having an argument with your wife, like I'm the annoying friend that I'm like, I don't care what your wife did. Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
It's because it's what you can control. In business, there's just like, verbatim, it's what you said. Like you control what you can control. And I think in any situation, it does not matter what it is. Like in an argument with a spouse, sometimes it is true 50-50. Like you're both being jerks to each other. You're both wrong and you both need to kind of own up and fix it. Sometimes there's that situation where like the other person's 95% at fault and it is truly their thing and you're only 5% responsible for it. But where I think a healthy marriage comes in is like, well, do you own your 5%?
Right.
Do you own it? Well, let's just say the election caused all this stuff with ad spend and with just political environment, people nervous, they're not spending like they were. Well, there is still some things you can control. And what are we doing within that sliver that might move the needle to, which I think that is kind of what offsets the impact of these other things.
Well, it was really similar, like even COVID, 2020, a lot of retailers really struggled that year. For us, we didn't. And, it's almost like I feel bad saying that sometimes, but for us, we kept business as usual. We, in the fact of what we were doing for sales, we adjusted some things. We, amped up our online stuff and, all that, but our customers still showed up. And I do think that was because we weren't sitting here being like, oh, we really need to make this launch great or, all this stuff. It was just like, all right, like this is the situation we're in. Let's do it. Let's roll.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so good. Well, Brooke, this has been incredible. Like, I think the things you shared there's so much. Like if you're still into this episode, I hope that you're leaving this encouraged around like, okay, these are the things that's possible or maybe catching a nuance. So Brooke, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And it's been an honor to, be so involved with the brand and really get to see like behind the scenes what your journeys look like and get to be a part of your growth and all of those pieces.
Yeah, we've really appreciated it. And it's been really fun too.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, my big favor to ask, if the way to say thank you is leave a review, let us know that you enjoyed it. Let others know. That helps us get in front of more retailers just like you and encourage people in their journey. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Retail Initiative podcast. If you want more free resources, trainings, downloads, you can get those at madebycapital.com/podcast. Again, that's madebycapital.com/podcast. And for those of you that are serious and really want to take the success that you've built in your brick and mortar storefront and you want to create that same level of success online, I invite you to schedule a free call with me, at madebycapital.com/schedule, where we'll dig into your business, like where things are now, where you're wanting to go, getting really clear on your goals, and what are the 2 or 3 things that might be standing in the way of getting there. Now, look, if we're a good fit, I'd love to share what that looks like. And if not, my hope is that you leave with clarity on where to focus for you to reach your goals. So again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and I cannot wait to see you next time.